Welcome back to TomPadulaTV. We are discussing history and reflecting on the fact that wars are bad, but they seem to happen on a regular basis. Now, how do we tackle this idea of trying to get rid of wars in humankind and replacing it with better relationships between nations, between groups, individuals? For after all, you can either be a victim or an oppressor in a war. We can't be both. So how about living together for a change and using our considerable powers of creating huge defence budgets in order to promote peace and harmony rather than war? How do we do this? What are your thoughts on this, Kelvin?
Well, it's interesting. After the First World War, Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, who set up the Turkish state, said that after he had set it up, he said that killing people other than in self-defence is murder and unjustified. And he had the slogan, peace at home and peace in the world. And after the Second World War, the nations of the world said, we've got to be able to do better than this. And they established the United Nations. And
UNESCO, yeah.
And the United Nations is a global forum to, amongst other things, try and resolve conflicts. Now, of course, as you point out, wars have been going on all the same. And some people would say the United Nations hasn't been all that successful in preventing or resolving conflicts. But it's better to talk, it's better to be there at the United Nations and to try and talk these issues through. And I had the good fortune last year to spend a significant period of time at the United Nations General Assembly for nations to discuss their differences and their grievances rather than resorting to the use of military power and military force. But these things are complicated. You see what's going on in Syria today, and the United Nations wrestles with how do we handle this? Should we be in there?
We only had 1.2 billion people in the world at the beginning of the 20th century. We now have, after 110 years, almost 7 billion. And going back to what we were saying before, you said that the Anzac nurse was talking about people, young men dying and calling mother. 2 Anzac mothers, there we are. This is Ataturk, and this is a book which was published right here. In the city of Moreland in 2005. Amazing, amazing. And this is this particular book says Gallipoli, lovely book, and it does talk about the relationship between Australia and Turkey from a modern point of view. So it's an interesting book, and you know, it's wonderful when we discuss history because we learn from it. And I don't honestly think that the United Nations has been a failure. It might look that way. People want to criticise it, sure, and it might even cost a lot of money, but what's the alternative? I mean,
exactly.
This is the problem is, and in politics, this is what happens, is that what are the alternatives sometimes? What do we do? Because we fail, we change our mind every day. Policies change, laws change, people have different views. It is an incredibly varied world. So balancing all the interests is a hard act to follow. Yes. So you've been to the United Nations?
I have indeed, and I think that it does do a lot of important work. It is true that if it didn't exist, we would have to invent it. You have to have some forum like that where countries can get together and discuss issues and problems. It does do useful things, not only through the aid programs and the Millennium Development Goals and so on, but directly in relation to peacekeeping. It has peacekeeping operations in parts of Africa, which have been the subject of strife. It's got peacekeeping operations in East Timor and other places as well. So I do think that it does very useful things.
That's what I love about you, the fact that you have this inner knowledge of all these policies and places, because you are on various committees as a member of Wales. You represent the whole country, you represent all of us. We mightn't agree with you a lot of the times. You might even be given a hard time by the press. And look, you have to take it, because good and bad go hand in hand. Without bad, you can't know what good is, and without good, you can't know what bad is. So let's balance the two, and let's accept the fact that there are both things. But it does require a particular training to be able to put up with all that our media throws at us. Because when they love you, they truly love you. But when they hate you, they do a good job. Just ask your colleagues in Parliament right now.
Yeah, well, that's true. But for my own part, Tom, I've been in Parliament a long time now, and I believe in saying what I think. I don't think there is any value having the opportunities that I've been given if you don't give of yourself and say what you really think and what you really believe. And I know that when you do that, you expose yourself to criticism. Not everyone will agree with you on every issue, so that's part of the deal.
And I've been one of those people who tried to avoid expressing a precise opinion. And I suppose I'm sort of a member of the public. We're trying to balance things, but unfortunately in politics, like in law, when you're a defence lawyer, you have to defend what there is there. So therefore, your training brings you more to this very precise views, and therefore when you express these precise views, sometimes I find myself in agreement and disagreement almost at the same time.
I think one of the things we need to be able to do is to engage in conflict without having it get out of hand, and to be able to accept and tolerate different points of view. And one of the things I'd like to say about my experience at Gallipoli that's brought home frequently is that there were acts of great selflessness shown on the battlefield, as well as the sort of ordinary courage of battle, and important and all as that is. For example, there was a Turkish soldier who picked up an Australian soldier, went out on the battlefield, picked up an Australian soldier, Lieutenant Casey, who'd been wounded, took him over to the Australian side, put him down on the Australian side and walked back. Now, he could have been...
No one shot him.
No one shot him. He could have been killed at any moment, but A, no one did, but secondly, he had this immense courage and selflessness to do a thing like that. And this was not isolated. It's well known that both the Australian soldiers and the Turkish soldiers developed a great regard for each other, and were able to do remarkable things like have an armistice for the purposes of burying the dead. That was important, but also did things like soccer games and stuff like that. So,
talking about burying the dead,
yes.
You remember when you were talking about Libya, and I made the remark of there are no Italian soldiers there. That's because Colonel Gaddafi apparently sent the ashes back to Italy.
Is that right? I didn't.
I'm not quite sure. I think.
I didn't know that. Well, Mustafa.
But the Italians did a really nice thing, and on the same ship that went to Italy, apparently then they sent back honey back to Libya.
Yes.
So, in other words,
yes. Well,
these are
Mustafa Kemal said to the mothers of those from other nations who have come here and who are lying on Turkish soil, they have become our sons as well. You are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. So he sought to put that past, that difficult and painful past behind Turkey, and for us to enable the friendship to build. And
I think that is really the ultimate reflection of this particular program, is to say that when young men are dead and they are buried in another land, they become also the sons of that country, but never forgetting, of course, where they come from.
Yes.
It's not always possible to bring them back, and on that note, I feel that whether we're alive or we're dead, we're all part of Mother Earth. Let's not forget it. And on that note, we're finishing off this particular program. Thank you for your company. I will invite Kelvin Thomson again to see his softer side. And ciao for now from Tom Padula and TomPadulaTV.